Hey, Jacques here. Quick video, to-a-point video. I want to show you how to design this hero section in Figma using auto layout. Now, this is a to-a-point video, which means we're going to jump right into it. We're going to get it done. And by the way, make sure to smash that like and subscribe button. I do post videos like this on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And it's all about web design. It's all about web development. And it's all about also running a digital marketing agency. All right, so with that said, let's jump into it. All right, so the first thing we want to do is we want to take the frame tool, and there's two ways of doing this. We can either take the frame tool and we can drag it onto the canvas and create a frame, or the other option, which I like to do though, is we want to select a pre-made template on the right-hand side, and I love to select desktop. All right, so with desktop selected, we are going to rename it, and I'm going to call this homepage. With that done, we are going to activate auto layout, and you're going to see when you activate auto layout, one of the important things to note, it is the actual width and height, and you will see that it is set to fixed. So let's leave that for now. The next thing I'm going to do is we want to start with the actual logo. So I'm going to take the text tool, we're going to drop it into the artboard, and I'm just going to call it Resta, just like that. You're going to notice when we zoom in here, you won't be able to drag this around. And the reason for that is because we have auto layout. All right, so with that, we are going to style in this logo. First thing, I want to select a font. Now I am using Google Fonts for this. I'm going to use Fredoka, which is one of my favorite, by the way. And we're going to change the 12 to 34. Now it's nice and big. We're also going to change the regular to semi-bold. All right, so we have semi-bold and we have selected Fredoka. One of the things though is the last bit of this. I want to change the color. So the TA, I want to change that. And I already have created a variable color, but I'll quickly show you how to do this. We're going to select the black and we're going to change it to a desired color. So let's say we select that color. Once you have that color selected, we're going to hit the dots and you are going to hit the little plus button and you are going to create a primary color. Now in my case, I already have one and I'm going to use primary for this. All right, so with that done, we are going to select that logo again and we want to change the other dark. And we want to do the same thing. So we want to play around with a little bit of a lighter color. And you also want to go to the little dots and you want to create a new variable color. Now I've already created one, which is dark, and I'm going to select it. By the way, in the description below of this video, I do have this design. I posted and published it on the community. So you can literally just duplicate this and use it and do whatever you want with it. All right, so now that we have the logo created, let's start with the navigation or the menus. So taking the text tool, we're going to drop that in and I'm just going to type out home. Now, because we've selected Fredoka and we've selected 34, 32, 34, we are going to see that it will be set as default. So we need to change that. I'm going to use Roboto. So I'm going to take Roboto and I'm going to change this to 15px. And there we have our home. And I'm also going to change the color to dark so that we have the actual color. And there's a very specific reason why I'm using variable colors, because once we start creating that dark version, it's going to be way easy to do that. All right, with home, we are going to duplicate this. So duplicate it a few times by hitting Control D or Command D. And we're going to change the second one to about. The third one, we're going to say menu. And let's make this one chefs, and the last one, let's change that to contact. All right, perfect. Now that we've done all that, we're going to select all of it and we are going to group it by hitting Command G or Control G. I'm going to rename it to menu. And with that, we are going to take our logo and we're also going to group that. We're going to call it logo. And we're going to take both of them. We're going to group it again because we are going to call it header. Perfect. So now that it's called header, we are going to change it to auto layout. We are going to set it so that it's centered. We're going to change the width so that it fills the whole artboard. Now you'll see that it will fill everything, but that's not entirely what I want now that I think about it. So I'm going to take header and I'm going to group it again and we're going to rename it to container and activate auto layout again. The reason I'm doing that is because I want to set a specific breakpoint or container. With that, we're going to change it to fixed height and we're going to change this to 1280. And last thing we want to do is we want to take this and we want to make sure that we center it. So with that done, you'll notice, you won't actually see it, but you'll notice that container is now nicely centered in the actual artboard. All right, with that, we are going to add a bit of icons now as well. To do that, we are going to click on the resources button and we are going to search for material symbols. Material symbols is part of Google Fonts and it's their icons, which in my previous videos, if you follow me, you'll notice that I always use Iconify, but this time I'm going to use material symbols. All right, so once we've opened up this plugin, I want to search for search because we want that actual search icon. All right, so we have this search icon right here. And the other one I want is shopping. So let's search for shopping. And now that I've searched for shopping, I have it right here. We can drop that in as well. Now, one thing you're gonna notice that it does not drop it into the actual artboard. It drops it right outside, which is fine for now. We're gonna select both of them. We're gonna open up our menu and we will drag it into this header area. So we're gonna take that and we're gonna drop it into the header, but you're gonna notice that it puts it right at the beginning. So we need to move it right to the end of the header, right there. All right, so a couple of things. What we want to do next is we want to move and shift everything so that it is logo on the left, menu in the middle, and icons on the right. To do that, we are going to change the actual gap from 10 and we're going to set that to auto. And you're going to see that it moves everything. It's not 100% there yet, but we're getting close. Next, I want to take the search and the shopping cart icon. We're going to group that together again. And let's just rename this. I love renaming my layers, by the way. It just makes things so much easier, especially when you start moving to development. By the way, if you want to know how to develop a website, check the description below. I have a great video of that. All right, we're going to activate auto layout. We're going to change the actual auto. And we're gonna set this to 24, but you're gonna notice that this is not 100%, it's not great. So we need to change the actual fix and we wanna change that to hug. And once you've done that, you'll see that it shifts it to the right-hand side. All right, let's give this menu a little bit of attention as well. I'm gonna take this menu and we are gonna activate auto layout on it. So on the right-hand side, we activate auto layout and we're gonna change auto to 10, but we're going to change 10 again to 24. All right, so we're going to make sure that it's set to dark, which it is, which is great. And the actual icons on the right hand side, I think we need to go and change the color as well because it has a custom color and we want to change that. We want to set that to our dark. And last thing, I just want to make this a tiny bit smaller. And there we go. We have our actual header completed. All right, so the next step is creating the actual slide bit. And I am going to start with the text tool. I always like to start with the text tool. When you work with auto layout, I always recommend you start from inside out, meaning you start from the bottom and you work your way to the top. So let me explain what I mean. In our container, we're going to take our text tool, but before we drop that, I want to make sure that my actual alignment is set to vertical layout and not horizontal, because if I do that, it's not going to work great, but it's set the correct way, which is good. I'm going to take my text tool and we're going to drop it in. Now, first things first, you're going to notice that it didn't drop it where I want it. We're going to fix that in a bit. So I'm just going to say heading for now, and we are going to select it, but we're going to drag it now into the container right below header. All right, now we have it right below header. One thing I want to do is I want to group this again, and we are going to activate auto layout, and we are going to set the hug to full container, and we will for now just set it to center. We're going to take this heading and we're going to duplicate it again. And we're going to just rename this to section, that frame. And once we have this, we want to again set the layout so that it goes vertical. All right, so now with that done, we have our heading, we have subheading. That is a good start. So now we need to start populating this with actual text so that it makes sense. All right, so to do that, we are going to select our heading. Now, this is where you can be creative. Now, I already have a text editor with some of the text just added super rough, and I basically used ChatGPT to do this. And I basically just asked it to create me a heading, subheading, and some text, which of course I highly recommend not to do that when you actually design a proper website. This is great for if you just want to show your client a few things, but you don't want to use this in production. So I'm going to copy that and we're going to drop that into our first heading. And I'm going to copy the art of fine steak. And we're gonna drop that into our second heading as well, which is perfect. Now we gotta start modifying this a little bit. Now, when I say modify, we gotta start with the actual font size. So I wanna change the first one. I wanna change that to 16px. And again, you're gonna see that it's using absolute dark, which is not what we want. We wanna set that to dark of our actual variable that we saved. The art of fine steak, I wanna change this. I wanna change it all up. I wanna make it 96, but I also wanna change that to Fredoka. And there we go, semi-bold. Let's change that to medium, might look a little better, which it does. And I'm going to change the line height. Let's change the line height to 100 for now. And let's change this to our primary color. All right, so now we have our heading and we have our subheading, whatever you want to call it. Next, we want to take these two and we want to group that together. And I'm going to rename that and call it right. Perfect. And obviously, as you know, we're going to activate auto layout and we're going to set that so it's left aligned. All right, perfect. Now with that done, let's go ahead and create that art on the left-hand side. I'm going to show you how to do that quickly. So you take your rectangle tool and you drag it onto the artboard, just wherever. That's random. It doesn't really matter at this stage. We are going to change this up anyway, so it doesn't matter. I'm going to change it and make the thickness and the height about this. So I'm just going to fine tune it a little bit here. Let's just move this outside so that we can play around with it a little bit. And let's go and change this up a little bit. I'm going to make it 80 by 250 for now. We're going to play around and see, make sure. And we're going to check the roundness. We're going to change the roundness to 50. Once that's done, we're going to hold in Alt and you're going to literally duplicate that right next to each other. And you're going to make it a little bit smaller. We're going to do that again, make this one the same as that one right there, and do that again. And we're going to duplicate that. All right, now with that all done, the last thing I want to do is I want to take the ellipse tool. I'm going to drop that in right at the end here. Now, because our width is 80, we want to make sure that this one is set to 80 as well. And with that all done, we're going to highlight everything and we're going to hit the little center and we are going to put this right there. Actually, I'm going to move it in a little bit just to kind of be a little bit more creative there. All right, so now we have our vector for the image on the left-hand side. And I'm going to group this all together and I'm just going to call it IMG for now. Once everything is selected, so I'm going to open up this group and I'm going to select all of them. And we are going to select union. So once you've got that all union, we have a base to work on. Now, here's a little thing. You can create an actual component of this, which might be easier to work with. But before we do that, let's go and add that image. By the way, the image and this design is in the description below, and it's a free image that I grabbed from Pexels itself. Now that we have the image added into the union, we can go and create a component of this. So now we'll see that it will change to purple, which means it's a great component, which means we can add it now to our actual artboard. All right, now with that, we're going to go back to our home page and we are going to select the section area. We're going to click on assets and we're just going to drag it in. And now that we've dragged it in, we just got to play around with it a little bit. And the way to play around with it is we're going to select section and we're going to change the actual layout. And we're going to change that to horizontal, which means we have the base up and running here, but I want to change the space. I want to change that to 48 and I want to change this to a -45. There we go. All right, so now that we have our art on the left-hand side, the next step is to go and add our paragraphs. So I'm going to take the text tool as per usual on the right-hand side, and we are going to drop that in. And again, it's going to drop it exactly where you don't want that. It's kind of normal, but I'm going to take the paragraph that we have and I'm going to drop that in here. It's going to be pretty nasty, which is fine. We just got to change it up a little bit. So I'm going to change this to 16. I'm going to change that to Roboto. And with that said, I want to make sure that my line height is 34. All right, with that done, we want to take the paragraph and we want to drag it so that it is about this size. With that said, we want to make sure that we go hug for a height so it's a little bit more controllable. I also want to change the medium to regular and we'll make sure it's 16px and 34 line height. Now we just got to drag it into the right hand side right at the bottom and we have it right there. But we have to fine tune this a little bit. So I'm going to take these two, the heading and subheading, group that together, and we are going to activate auto layout. And on the right hand side, now we can change the actual gap space, and I'm going to change that to 48. The reason why I group together the heading and the subheading is because if we don't and we set the gap, it's going to affect that gap as well, which we don't. So I'm just going to rename this and we're going to call it heading. All right, perfect. Now we have our paragraph in there. It's not 100% there yet. What I do want to do though is we want to change that fixed and we want to say full. And now you'll see that it will full it and will be exactly how we want it. All right, so with that done, the next step now is to create that button. Okay, to create that button, we're going to make sure we click on the right. We're going to take that text tool, we're going to drop that in. And again, it's going to drop it exactly where you don't want it, which is fine, but we're going to say book a table. Perfect. Now that that's done, we're going to take that and we're going to drag it into the right there, right at the bottom. And now we have the base for the button up and running. Now, next thing, as you know, we're going to hit Control G. We're going to activate auto layout. I'm going to change the border radius to something ridiculous like 500 because I want that rounded pull edge. And with that, we are going to activate the fill and we are going to change that to primary. Now that we've done that, the next steps is to give it a little bit of padding. So I'm going to change this to 15. We will change the left side to 24, and I'll show you exactly why I do that. Once that's done, we're going to select book a table, and I'm going to change it to white, and let's add that as an actual variable. I'm going to add that as white. We're going to use that later on. And with that done, we are going to make sure that this is set to semi-bold. Next, we want to add a beautiful little icon on the right-hand side. And going back to our resources and plugins and selecting material symbols, and we are going to search for arrow. There we go. And we're going to select that arrow right there. And I'm going to change this to our variable color, which is white. Now, again, you're going to notice that it does not put that into the actual artboard. So we got to drag this in until it puts it right into the button, which it's done right there. Next, we want to take this arrow and we want to make sure that we group it, which I just did right there. And we're going to call it arrow. All right, so now that it's renamed to arrow, we are going to activate auto layout. We're going to put this guy into center and I'm going to change this to fixed height. And let's change it to 50 by 50 for now. We are going to change this, don't worry about that. And we are going to activate fill. All right, so now that fill is activated, we are not seeing our icon, and the reason for that is because the icon doesn't have a fill, and we're going to change that so that we can set it to dark. All right, so now we have our icon and we do have our surrounding auto layout. Now with that said, we want to change the border radius to something ridiculous like 500 because we want to simulate an ellipse or a circle. With that done, we do have our beautiful arrow and its circle itself. So we want to make sure that we center align this. So I am going to select the button, which is frame 2. We can actually change it to primary button. All right, so with that renamed to primary button, we are going to make sure that we left center align it. We want to make sure that this space is set to 24. Now, the one thing though is I feel like this is too big, so we want to decrease that. Let's change that to 35 by 35. And we want to make sure that we take this arrow and we change that to 18. All right, so there we go. We have our beautiful button that says book now, book a table. So we are getting close. We are getting to a point where it looks like something. One thing though is I want to decrease this space. I feel like 24 is a little too much. So let's change that to 16. And I feel like the spacing at the top is also too much. So let's change that to 8. And there we go. Now it's starting to look like a button. Just want to change the last one here. So on the right-hand side padding right, we want to change that to 8. And there we go. We have our beautiful button. All right, next step is we want to add a little bit of shadow. We want to add a bit of depth to this button. I use a plugin called Shadow Maker. There's quite a few that you can use. There's quite a few that I favor, but I love to use Shadow Maker. And there's another one called Beautiful Shadows as well, which we can also use. But Shadow Maker for now is what the one I'm going to use. We're going to play around with this. We're going to make it so it's about there. And the distance, I want to decrease the distance a little bit. I want to bring this down a little bit. And there we go. We have a beautiful button. All right, we're going to hit select and we're going to add that shadow. And we're going to do the same for this actual icon as well. So go back to Shadow Maker. We're going to do the same for this. But I'm going to increase the opacity just a little bit. We're going to apply. Now with that done, we want to go back to primary button and we want to clip the content because I don't want that shadow to go past the button itself. All right, so with that said, we have our beautiful button, book a table, and we have the arrow on the right-hand side. Now we got to fine tune everything. We got to make sure that we fine tune it because at this stage, we do have the home page, but it's set to fixed because we have this empty space here. So we're going to change that fixed to hug. And there you see, we have our beautiful slide. Now we can play around with the spacing a little bit. So to play around with the spacing, I am going to select the container that everything is within. We're going to change this to perhaps 48, actually even more. Let's change it to 96. And there we go. We have the 96 spacing. Now, with that said, we do want to emulate this spacing that we have 96 here at the bottom. And we have a space here already. And the reason for that is because of this vector, or because of this image. You'll notice that it is set to minus 45 degrees. So it is pushing a bit of spacing there, which is fine. We can play off it. Now, normally how I get around this is we can select the button and you'll see that it's 36.95. So if I open up my calculator and we take 96 minus 36, that's going to give a number for us, which is 60. So we're going to take our container and we are going to change the bottom, so the padding bottom, to 60 to emulate that beautiful look and feel. All right, so I'm just going to take this guy. We're going to move it to this part. Now we have the base up and running. The next thing I want to do is I just want to add a bit more spacing on the actual top here. So it's set to 10 right now. I just want to change that to 24 so we have a bit more spacing here. All right, so now we have a little bit more spacing here at the top, which is good. We are at a point now where we can start playing around with the last few bits. Now, one thing I do want to do is I want to add a little bit of life to this whole thing. It is good what we have right now, but we got to add a little bit more life to it. And one way to do that is by adding a little bit of extra features, like for example, a great shadow and a blob maybe in the background. So with that said, let's take this image or this asset that we have, and we are going to select Shadow Maker, and we're going to play around with this just to give it a little bit more life. All right, with that done, let's add a blob to this. Let's be a little bit creative. Opening up our plugins, I have a plugin called Blobs. We're going to select that. And with this open, select Insert. We're going to take this and let's just move it right here. Now it's going to move everything about and it's going to mess everything up, which is fine. We just got to activate the absolute positioning for it. And once that's done, you'll see that everything will move back the way it's supposed to, which is fine. All right, so with that done, we are going to move it up a little bit to around this point right here. And we are going to select the primary color, but I am going to detach it because I want to change the opacity and I want to make it super light. Like this literally just needs to be there to give the user a little bit of an accent. So with that done, we have our beautiful color right there. Actually, I'm going to make it a little darker around about there. Perfect. So now we have that done. We're going to take this blob and we are going to duplicate it. And I'm going to group these two together and we're just going to call it blob. You can call it whatever you want. I mean, that's completely up to you. All right, so with that done, we are gonna go into that group and we're gonna move the second one down a little bit and we are gonna get rid of that full. We're gonna add a stroke. With the stroke activated, we're gonna hit the little dots. We can select dash. I wanna take that to, I'm gonna change that to 12. We are going to change the opacity. We're gonna bring that down to a point where it looks like it kind of fits. Beautiful, so that is done right there. Now we've added a bit of accent to our design. All right, so this is the basics. We created that Euro section, and in the next video, we are going to actually develop this. I'm gonna show you how to do that using Tailwind CSS as well as ReactJs. So as always, make sure to smash that like and subscribe button. I will be posting that video pretty soon, and thanks for watching.